My name is Stuart Leiby. This is my 2007 Honda S2000. This is actually my third S2000. I've had two 2000s before this one, and I've had this one since 2014. I actually haven't always been a fan of the S2000. I was actually a fan for about a year or so when they first came out, because I actually had my dad's boss bought one back in 2000, or I guess 1999. I was 12 or 13 years old. My dad took me for a ride in it, and I still remember just the visceral 9,000 RPM, just screaming with the top down. I remember all that. Started getting a little bit older, didn't really do anything for me. I saw mostly girls driving them, and I wasn't a girl, so I didn't want one. But until I got into college, I didn't really have much more exposure to them. I had a couple fraternity brothers that had them. Wasn't a huge fan of how fast they were out of the box. Then as I got older, more and more of my friends were into the Honda drag racing scene. They kind of brought me over to the dark side from the good old GM side of town. And after that, I started getting a little bit more interested, and that was enough comfortable with my sexuality at that point to go ahead and buy an S2000. One of my main goals in building this car is I didn't want to take away what the S2000 actually was. I'm not a huge fan of swap cars, although I get it in a lot of scenarios, but the S2000 is just so good, and the transmission's great, the engine's great, it handles great, and I didn't want to go put a solid axle in it, put an automatic in it, put a LS in it, put a 2J in it. I wanted it to stay an S2000. So it's still an IRS car, still a 6-speed, even though now it's a sequential, but it is still using the factory F22 block. It's actually the original block out of this car. It's now got aftermarket sleeves and it's been beefed up. Stock sleeves are not gonna last at 1,000 horsepower and 50 pounds of boost like this thing sees. It still drives like an S2000, which is exactly what I wanted. It's still on a steel rod, basic diamond pistons in it, still using a factory crankshaft. It's got some pretty trick stuff in the cylinder head, some copper valve seats, a kind of proprietary head gasket design that we use at my work T1 in the GTR program that we have. So I've kind of been able to take advantage of some of the technology that we've put into the Nissan engines and integrated into mine. It's using twin disc carbon clutch. It's got a Quave sequential in it, carbon drive shaft, and it's using a Nissan R200 rear end. As far as the electronics go, it's using a Motec M130 that's been tuned by Tony Palo. He's kind of the godfather of Motec and Honda. He's got his little touch everywhere throughout the car as far as the electronics go. It's got a Motec C127 dash, and it's actually got a really cool brushless fuel pump. It's a single intake pump being controlled by an Injector Dynamics brushless fuel pump controller. The single intake pump is actually supporting over 1,000 wheel horsepower on ethanol. I actually didn't have a very good run of accomplishments with this car for a couple years after I switched it to ethanol, and I was making about 600 or so. I think I broke probably 6 or 7 transmissions, a couple differentials, just having an absolute garbage time with it. It would make it down the block, I'd break it. And I thought about hanging it up and kind of quitting it at that point. In the last 2-3 years have been phenomenal with the car. It's gone pretty decent in the half mile, which is something I aim for. And then probably the highlight is I actually went 820 in the quarter mile at the World Cup Finals in Maryland last year. And that was a pretty emotional moment for me after so much trouble that I've gone through with this car. The car is not as recognizable in the current livery as it has been in the past. It's been white for 6 years or so. A lot of times at races, it would have a very well-known cat on the side that had rainbows coming out of it, and its body was a Pop-Tart. Car got really well known for that and was known as the S2000. I don't know how people are going to like the new livery, but that was a thing of the past. I don't really think I have much left to do to the car at this point. Yeah, it's a wormhole that you can go down and just keep throwing thousands of dollars at it, but I feel that it's the perfect mix of something I can still drive on the street in Mexico and also at the track. If I go any further, I think it's just going to be, braking pretty much every pass, which is not something I'm interested in. I get a lot of grief about this car not really being a street car, and I get why. There's no AC in it. The exhaust is coming out of the hood, but I honestly drive this thing several times a week with my morning coffee and AirPods in. It hasn't broken on me in honestly about 1.5 years, which is just crazy for me because I absolutely beat the crap out of this car. I mean, it's constantly on the rev limiter, just sliding it doing burnouts everywhere, it gets beat, and it just keeps ticking. You know, I may own this car, but it is definitely not just because of things that I've done to it. It would not be anywhere near as nice as it is, as fast as it is, as reliable as it is, without the help of a lot of my friends. They've just countless hours they've helped me with. Tony's years of knowledge that he's given me. I mean, Brandon's my best friend and has really been there at the drop of a hat to put the motor together, put the cylinder head up, come put it in the car, help me pull the transmission out. Like, you know, Terrence has helped me wire it. I've had friends from New York that own high-level motorsport wiring companies that will build me a harness instead of doing something else that they really should be. So this car is definitely a culmination of a lot of really talented people's hard work.